Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Mind Shift, our rebranded podcast, and one where we discuss creating a life beyond limits. This is really exciting. It's our first episode with a real guest, and I really can't think of a more appropriate guest to launch this whole podcast than Andrew Hall. Andrew, firstly, thank you for being on the podcast. You know, the reason I say you're the perfect person, Andrew, is when I was thinking about you being on this podcast, and I've really wanted you to be a guest for quite a long time. I think about your life, and your whole life is to me, and everything I've learned about it, your whole life is about moving beyond limits and living a life that isn't limited. And that's what you're dedicated to, and I'm sure we're all looking forward to hearing more about your just lifelong dedication into taking something that could be limiting and is very maybe difficult to not be limiting. I know the great work that you do. And, for me, you demonstrate what a life beyond limits is about. So again, thanks for being here. And so we've known each other. I was just trying to work it out. So it's been around 6 or 7 years now, isn't it?
Yep,
In that area. And you've been engaged in our conversations and the mind shift conversations as we talk about them now. So what I realized was just with the mind, like what some of the things you're going to talk about. What have people achieved with it? What have we got past that we never thought that we could get past, or what possibilities came to us, that we may not have known were possible for us. And so I'd love to just ask you the first question, which is what brought you to the Mind Shift conversations? I know it was a while ago, but if you can remember, what had you say, hey, look, I want to have that conversation and see where it goes.
Yeah, so about 7 years ago, I was at a different job to the one I have now. I was technical lead on a quite a large scale IT project, $60+ million project, and I was working 80 hours a week. For the last 9 months of the project, I worked 80 hours a week, 80+ hours a week, and it was just mental. The whole thing was completely over the top, and I had been moaning about my work-life balance or lack thereof to a very good friend of mine who. She and her husband were clients of yours, and I hadn't heard of you, and they recommended I speak to you because in terms of just managing how I was operating and wanting to throttle those that were around me, and managers who didn't understand, and staff who wouldn't do what they were told, and all the rigmarole of a project of that nature. And very quickly upon meeting you and you. In a nice way, I'd describe you. You ruthlessly coached me to look at myself and say, well, what are how have you caused this, and how's this come about, and what are you doing about it? And it made a heck of a difference to how I was within that environment. The project delivered successfully, and it was tough, but it was incredibly rewarding in the end. It was clear to me, though, that wasn't what I wanted to be doing longer term. And so then relatively soon after that finished, I changed to my current job. And in terms of that shift in career and things as well, your influence had a lot to play in doing that.
Well, I mean, there was a lot in that opening. So if we go back, I think some people might be, or a lot of people might listen to that and say, you said I asked you to look at yourself. And, if we think about the way that life goes, it's just not the way we do things, right? If something's going on, we look for whose fault it is or who's not doing something right, particularly as a lead. As a manager, you're looking for who's not doing their job right or what's not going right. And so projection is the way to be. And I think for some people that could be really foreign to say, I won't say the word ruthlessly, won't remind everyone, but it probably feels that way because...
Well, it's not ruthless, it's honest.
It's honest, right? I was just thinking this morning, Andrew, on the way here, and I was thinking about you coming. I think about the courage it takes, to do the work and to actually get in and look at yourself. It's very courageous. But one of the reasons I put this, we designed this podcast was to say, what happens when you show that courage? Like, what happens when you are willing to hold up a mirror and say, this is what's going on. And I just remember, I hope you don't mind me saying, like, you were just at wit's end with that project when you came. You're like, what do I do with it? And there were obviously without naming names, there were some people that were just kind of frustrating you at the time, like all of us in that kind of environment. From memory, it was quite an intense project, like with time frames and massive scale and these kinds of things. So the tensions were high, and I think when firstly, to honor the courage that you did show. So what can you say about it? Because I think if I'm listening to this and I haven't heard the mind shift conversations in the past, I'm going, well, what does that mean? Look at myself. Don't I fix it out there? Like, is it the problem out there? And I need to, fix that person and get this person in line. And that's my job as a leader to do that. So what did you find? Like, I know it was a while ago, but what did you find that assisted you to basically turn that around? And because I remember you coming and even though it was tough, you were having a better time with it after, like, once you started to apply some things. So,
Absolutely. I mean, the one of the key things that you taught me was to really look at a situation and say, is your perception of the situation true? Like, you perceive that person to be hopeless or slack or making it up as they go along, or whatever it may be. To be honest, in IT, there's a certain amount of that goes on. People pretending they know when they don't, or what have you. I would be judging people, thinking you don't know what you're talking about, or you're mucking me around, or you're hiding something, and that was my judgment. And as soon as I went there, I stopped listening to them. I stopped wanting to work with them. I stopped trusting that they would do what they were supposed to do. And in a large scale project, you can't operate that way. You need, and that was my perception of it, and understanding what's the truth. Is this true? Look, it may be true. It's not relevant to me if it's true or not. It's how I perceive it. So really delving into, is this true? Is this true? And then if you say, well, my perception of it is not necessarily the truth. So if I accept that that's not necessarily true, if I turn that around and have it present for me in a way that works for me, in other words, to put in place systems to ensure that what I want happens, or that what I think is important gets done, or that these people are not in my way or in the way of the project, then I begin to make progress. The best example of that was, there was the manager. He wasn't my manager, but they were a senior to me, who would be running a meeting. It was a meeting with about 20 people. It was held every week at the same time, and people were zooming in from all over the South Island for this particular sort of coordination meeting. And I was in the same room as this guy, rather than others were on the Zoom call. And I'd sit next to him, and during the meeting, he was on Facebook, on his phone. I sat next to him, and I could see he was on Facebook. And I used to sit there and watch him on Facebook, and it just used to do my head in. He's supposed to be chairing the meeting, and I'm sitting there watching him, and I was telling you this story, and thinking, oh yes, you'll agree with me that this guy's obviously phoning it in. And you said, so what was your contribution to the meeting whilst you're watching him on Facebook? So not only is he not contributing to the meeting, I'm not, because I'm so busy focused on him on Facebook. And it was a real penny drop moment, for I realised that if someone was sitting next to me watching me, then I'm clearly not paying attention because I'm looking at him. And they could be having the same opinion about me because I'm not contributing. I'm not doing my job. I'm not doing what I'm there for the project. And the ability to sort of realise that doesn't justify what he was doing or explain it or the truth behind it. I've got no idea what the truth about why he was on Facebook, or shouldn't have been, is irrelevant to me. I was there for the work. I was there for the project. And I needed to turn my attention from him and back onto the call and what we were there to do. And, I'll be honest and say that the following week I turn up, the same thing happens again. I find myself doing it again, and I have to stop again, So it's not like one and done. I have to keep focusing on that and keep kind of understanding about what's really going on here? What's the truth here? And my first truth is not necessarily going to serve me. I need to look at it and really question it.
Mm. There's a lot to unpack in that, Andrew. Like some just real gems, and possibly people scratching their heads on this at this point, going, "Whoa!" Right? Because compared to the way that we do things, like of course the guy on Facebook shouldn't be on Facebook during the meeting, right? Like that's 999 people out of 1,000 would go, they should be off the. You're doing the right thing, Andrew, by doing that. But I think if I just try to take the points out, because there's just so much. So much, I call it gold in there. That's just, when I call it gold, it's that mind shifting information that people can take and really change their lives, like you have. And I just think about that perception. You said something early on about, is my perception really the right one? And I love what you said there. Like, it doesn't matter if it's the right one, because the moment that you see it that way, that's who that person becomes to you. And, in organizations and in businesses and the work world and personal relationships, this is a dynamic that we work with, because the moment that we see the person that way, okay, they don't care about their job, we treat them that way, and then that's how they're going to start becoming for us. And we don't know that we're contributing to it because we have that perception. So a lot of the times, like with what you're saying, we just change, we do that, question, we basically shift and change the mindset to, wait, okay, I don't actually know why that person's behaving that way. Maybe I need to have a conversation with them, but through opening up that space, the person can show up differently, right, for us.
Well, and also the time that I spend thinking about them that way is not helpful time for whatever it is my mission or the project I'm on, and this applies, not just on that project, but in daily life. The time I spend thinking, judging that individual or that situation because of that, then it's not serving me.
Yeah, and it's that simple, and the other thing that you brought up is when I sorry, I had to have a chuckle because I remember that conversation. It was a while ago, and it was more of a question, and I said to you, what are you doing at that point? I said, what did you want him to be doing? He said, I want him to be paying attention to the meeting. And I said, well, if you look at yourself, what are you doing in that moment? And you said, well, I'm paying attention to him, and which is not, and it's interesting because look, it's profound. I have always found that whatever I am judging a person to do is what I'm doing, like without exception. So, people say they might come and it looks really like it. Like sometimes we have evidence that's really, compelling. So if someone comes up to me and says, well, Sridhar, you're whatever kind of thing, and I go, oh, well, that person's judging me, right? But I'm judging them. Because if I look carefully, I haven't stopped. I've been too concerned about myself to actually stop and say, is there something going on with that person? Like automatically I've made it about me. Yeah. They're judging me. And even if they're using my name, they just might be in a mind state. They might be having a bad day or something of that nature. But I will jump to conclusions, and then I'll forevermore treat that person as, at arm's length, as an enemy who judges me. Really, they might be asking for help and don't know how, or they might just be having a really tough time. So it's quite important, because you shared it was a really big project, and I remember how essentially, as you said, you have to keep the awareness. But the thing, Andrew, is if we don't, and I think you'll agree with this, if we don't come to understand that that's what we're doing, we don't have the awareness, and we're just locked in that, that entanglement with that person. But once we understand it, we can actually move past it and create a space for something different. And I think so you were able to do that. Like, I remember it was intense. I remember you saying,
I wouldn't have lasted without. I mean, the hours obviously were one thing, and exhaustion and all that sort of stuff. But you were having to make decisions under pressure, and I would have resigned rather than do it. And I got through it, and I got through it mainly. In a positive way. It was successful in the end, but part of the way I got through it was to know that this was finite. And again, in working with you, I was clear that I wanted to return to work that I'd done many years earlier, but and I did. So about 3 months after the project finished, I changed jobs, and it was a completely different field, but It was knowing that I had a finish point and I wanted to finish positively. I wanted the project to succeed, obviously, and have the satisfaction of a job completed.
Yeah, and you did, and that's a really great segue into when I think about you and our years of conversations together. Uh, all the times we get together are memorable, but there's one in that just always is indelibly in my mind, which was when we sat down. So part of the mind shift to creating a life beyond limits is, what is that life like? What's your real life about? What are you here for? And sometimes, again, a lot of this work is about digging and getting through the stories to get to our heart and get to what's really real for us. And I'll just never forget that. I said, okay, Andrew, well, you've done well with that. You've moved on. Let's really find out what your life is about and what you want to do. And then we came up with it. In those days, we called it your mission, which I still think is appropriate. And, that to me, I still remember it. And, creating a life beyond limits is changing things. And when I think about what you're up to in the world, it's changing things, right? And as I said, you could be limited. So you had, because I'd love to get into the mission now and what you do, which is to help people that, that could very well, everyone would understand and expect people to have limits, and with the mindset things that happen and with an accident like you've experienced. So if we could just go back to that. So you had an accident when you were a younger man. You're still a young man, but a younger man.
Well, I'm 61 now, and I was 19 when I dived into shallow water and broke my neck. So that was August 1983. So just coming up on 42 years.
So, that just, when you think about that, I think people could just be stopped, right? You could be bitter with the world. You could be resentful. You could go to a lot of places. And when I look at you, Andrew, I look at someone who just, right from as long as I've heard about it and have known you, you said, no, that's not me. And not only have you broken past those limits that could have happened, you're helping other people to break through those limits. And I'd love for you to share, if you remember, I remember it and I'm happy to say it, but your mission that you came up with just really blew me away. And I thought, this is the foundation of what creating a life beyond limits is. So that day,
okay. Thanks, Rita. I haven't got it in a pithy catchphrase, but I basically what I'm devoted to now, and I'm privileged to be able to work at it every day, is to normalising the experience of disability for those who've got it, but also for society as a whole. So I firmly believe, the sooner that everyone accepts a bit of variety in the world, a bit of diversity, to use the common term, as being normal, the better. And in some ways, it's kind of in opposition to what human nature tends to crave. We tend to crave the sameness, whether it's the same colour or the same sexuality or the same level of ability. But I think a society that normalises variability would be fantastic. That's the grand scheme. At a more specific level and more day-to-day practical level, if me as someone who has a disability is feeling different and unusual and abnormal, then that's a bad thing. And by abnormal I mean something less than normal, but also just as dangerously, someone has been made to be supernormal, like someone who's being held out as a inspiration. Oh, you're so inspirational. Oh God, Don't start me. I don't want to go there. If what had happened to you had happened to me, I'd want to kill myself. And you go, oh, right, great. How am I supposed to feel about that? And I hear that sort of thing all the time, and people will think they're being nice and not quite understand why that's unhelpful. And to me, it's about encouraging everybody with a disability, in my case a spinal injury, and I work in the spinal injured community, to live what I call a not unusual, extraordinary life.
Yeah, I remember you saying one time, we were discussing the mission and what it meant. So you come up with a statement of normalizing disability. We've been putting that word out of it, so let's not call it that. And I just remember you saying, the way when you complete your mission, what you'd love to see is people just saying, "There's nothing to see here."
Yeah.
Right? There's nothing to see here. It's just
That person uses a wheelchair, or or a cane, or is is deaf or whatever, is the same as someone who has spectacles, or that person's wearing earrings today, or whatever. It's just a feature about that individual. They've got blonde hair, or they're tall or they're short. It's a feature of them. It doesn't define them. And you could say, oh, that's my friend. He's the blonde chap. Oh, okay. Well, that's my other friend. They use a wheelchair. Okay.
just like that.
So they're not the wheelchair guy, or the blonde guy, or the spectacle guy, because that's just so normal. That's what I want to see with disability. And I think so many other things sort of recede into the background when that's possible, whether it be, opinions about return to work, or living a full life, or people, and in particular, I'm most interested in people themselves who've got the disability, to how they perceive themselves. And because I'm now working in the Burwood Spinal Unit, I am working with people newly arrived to the world of disability who are really struggling to get their head around it. And it ain't an easy transition to make. Yeah. But if they come to it, if we were successful and there was none of this perception in society before they become disabled, it makes that transition less of a shock. At the moment, it's quite a shock, and I'm not underplaying that, and no one's pretending it's good news. But it's got to be a goal to try and have that perception be more common.
Well, I think about something that we did, and when you say it's not good news, one of the premises of the work here is that it's quite another big. We talk about some big concepts here, and they could be confronting to people, and it's precisely why we're doing this podcast, which is to say, hey, if we don't address these issues, then we just not doing that doesn't help. It just creates a world like that, and where no one's thriving because everybody feels like they have to act a certain way and be a certain way, and not just say, hey, this is the normal for that person. Like, normal is what it is for us, right? That's normal. It's normal for you. It's normal for that person. This is what I do is normal for me. It isn't a normal, but one of the things I think about, because I remember we were having a conversation on that, and I think it'd be quite pertinent for people to hear, because we were talking about, and I said to you, well, is it good and bad? And we looked at your life in a way that, what's actually positive about this? Now, people might say, Sridhar, why are you doing that? That's really wrong. I'm like, because it's happened. And if you don't look at what's positive about it, what's the other option? Just feel bad about it for the rest of life? Well, life's too short for that, as far as I'm concerned. Whatever's happened to us, we have an opportunity to have a great time to live a great life. And I remember you just saying, because I know, and if you look up, you're on the socials and all of that, Andrew Hall, you've done amazing things for this community. And it's like, I remember you saying, well, if that hadn't happened, maybe I just lived an ordinary life. I think not ordinary, saying anybody's life is ordinary, but it would just, you are, I know whether you don't like to hear it or not, you are doing very extraordinary things. Like, you are living an extraordinary life.
A not unusual, extraordinary life.
Extraordinary in the sense of you're making a difference, and whoever you make a difference to, that's extraordinary, right? And it's, I remember you saying, like, that got you onto that, that purpose. And I think people need to understand that, like, it's our apparent tragedies in life that give us our, mine was drug addiction and homelessness and all of that, but I wouldn't be here with you sharing these kinds of concepts with people if that hadn't happened. And, I had some major stuff happen during that period of time, but I don't look back on it as, oh, it was a horrible time. And as you say, it wasn't pleasant, and I wouldn't choose to do it again. But when I look back on it, it's what I needed without knowing it to grow into the person who I am. And I think that that's important. But, I just remember that I can feel the energy from that, because you hear people say nowadays, we want to fight for the rights of this and the rights of that. But when I hear that, it's like, hey, this is life. This is normal. As much as you can get on with that, that's going to be the best way forward. And I believe you're right. So I think that when I talk about creating a life beyond limits, that's what it refers to, Andrew. It's like, that's beyond what most people are thinking. It's like, okay, well, it's a big thing to have happen in somebody's life. We need to go in and support them. And you're like, yes, we need to go in and support them. But my understanding of you is we need to challenge them too. Hey, what's your life like now? What are you going to do? What's your productivity in life and your purpose? So I think it's important to talk about, and you're just such a rare person that this kind of conversation can come out with.
Well, shit happens, and it happens to everybody. Sometimes it's more visible for some, whether it's death or divorce or illness or accident or whatever of yourself, of a loved one or a friend. Everybody has stuff, and even the word coping is a terrible word. How you cope with that stuff is critical, and and it's not even about positive psychology or reframing or any of that sort of stuff. And the key thing that I learned from you was around how does this situation serve me? How does what happened to you? How do you use that to go forward? What do you learn through that, and how's that equipped you? Whether it was the experience on this IT project where you've got under considerable stress, but you also achieving a lot or learning a lot about people, about human behaviour, and learning a lot about yourself, about how you respond in those situations. If you wind up in the spinal unit, you learn a hell of a lot about yourself and your family and your friends in a pretty short space of time. And, I did 42 years ago, and I, hopefully didn't ever stop learning from then on. But and I'm dealing with people now who are beginning that journey, and some and after they leave as well, who are on that way. And I don't want to. I'm not going to be Pollyanna and pretend it's easy, because it ain't. But life's not easy, but it's still fantastic, and it's still extraordinary. And there's a lot of pitfalls. There's a lot of little holes you can disappear down if you're not careful. And yeah, I like to think that the people we work with, my team, who are outstanding, they really are. They totally get it. It makes a real difference at an early stage in someone's journey. Their new arrival in the wheelchair world. And yeah, it's a phenomenal job, and it really is a privilege to be working with people at such a critical time in their lives.
Well, I mean, I just think about knowing some of the things you've done, the programs you've created, as a leader in the industry, because you've chaired boards and done numerous things. Like you've, in that leadership capacity, you've had a dramatic impact on, it's about the difference that you can make, the change that you can help people to, that you can inspire people. And that's where I see, hey, how can we call that bad, right? Like that's profound. And yeah, I think you just a moment ago, you said the line, if there's a line to take out and put up as the whatever, the catchphrase, life isn't easy, but it's fantastic. And I think if that's the mentality we can live with, then those not easy things don't get on top of us. And, unfortunately, I think all too often they do. And we don't come out of it. And if we can come out of it, then there is this is why I call it the mind shift. It's like there's this whole other life pathway to take once we shift that around. And, I think wonderful thing and what I appreciate about you being here and sharing this and doing the work is once you do it, how many other people are you going to impact to do that as well? Yeah. And that's then a follow-on effect, to go forward. So
part of the reason I'm trying to socialise the phrase not unusual, extraordinary life is that normal sounds kind of boring. I want to live a normal life. Before I broke my neck, I was planning on living a normal life. After I broke my neck, I wanted to continue to live a normal life. And you go, well, normal's doesn't. It's better than that. Our lives are better than normal. Everybody's life can be better than normal. Another example of this is that our organisation, the New Zealand Spinal Trust, set up a program called Kaleidoscope Vocational Rehab. It's not called that anymore, but it's still going. And it's basically we're working with people to get back to work within 2 weeks of their arrival in the spinal unit. Not that they're supposed to start work at that stage, but we're engaging with people. And in the disability employment world, there's agencies you go to. There's certain agencies devoted to helping you find a job. And I don't like that. I don't agree with that. if I want an agency to help me get back to work, I'll go online. I'll look at Seek. I'll go to job stuff. I'll look on the classified ads if there's still such a thing. I'm normal. I don't need a special employment service. Now, they're meeting a need, those employment services, because there's a whole cohort that believes they need special employment. Now, I'm not saying that I could just bowl into a job that's up 3 flights of stairs and with inaccessible bathrooms, all that sort of thing. There's certain accommodations I'm going to need. So that's what our service helps set up. But we don't find people jobs. We encourage them to find their own job using the normal channels. And it's that normalisation of that whole experience. The sooner the better, that people can come to that conversation, the better.
Yeah. I mean, the more that I hear you, the more I want to say this before I forget it because it just came up in my mind. What I'm getting from this conversation is normal is actually extraordinary, right? Like that's what we call normal is life is meant to be extraordinary. Yeah. And we get caught up under all these concepts and these perceptions that take from that and, does, I wouldn't say belittle, but limit people to not live that extraordinary life because we make assumptions about things. And instead of just saying, hey, whatever happens, your life is meant to be extraordinary. How can we help you to get there? And I think that's what I was so inspired by you. I remember that mission. Like I remember that day that we got it, and I was buzzing head to toe when you got it. I was like, wow, this is big time, right?
So was I.
Right, and this is what we need because everybody's extraordinary. Whatever happens to us doesn't change that. It's like, okay, well, sometimes what I'm hearing you say is extraordinary changes. Okay, so I guess sometimes normal. I mean, if we talk about that for a minute, how great is normal in that sense? You said I was going to live a normal life, but sometimes that's not making us ask questions of ourselves. It's not making us dig a bit deeper to say, what is life about? And, some of these things that happen, which you've said quite clearly aren't easy, and that's understandable, but they also do. You said, how does it serve me? That I'd asked you, that I didn't ask you once. We really delved into it until we found it, right? Because we want to. If something's happened...
it was a process. It took a while, and I had to be brutally honest about all sorts of things.
Yeah. But I mean, you see why we did it, right? Like when you find out how it serves you, then it becomes something that you use. It doesn't use you, right? It's something that's now on the way of your journey. It didn't get in the way of your journey. It's now part of it, and it's an extraordinary journey. Like you talk about Kaleidoscope, and I think people look at what you're up to because you were a bit humble, but you created that program, and it's something that's gone out to a lot of people and impacted a lot of people. That's what happens when you stay committed to your extraordinary. So I think this is just this is, I use the word gold a lot because I can't find a better one, but this is just absolute gold because I look out at society, and what inspires me to this work is how many people are caught up in concepts and constructs that limit them. And yes, things do happen, but how much do we let that get to us and stop living our life rather than this is a part of what I'm meant to do, or not meant to do so much, but this is what I'm dealing with. I'm here to live an extraordinary life. What does that look like? And as you said, I think you're saying it's not the easiest thing to do. We had Kaushik who he does the filming and for us and does all of our videos. He's an awesome guy, and he did an episode of it, and he talked about getting to clarity and how it took years to get to that clarity, but once he did, he would never trade it for anything in the world because it's that genuineness and being who you are.
Well, I mean, I said it before. I'm just thrilled that I'm where I want to be, where I need to be, and every day I get to do what I want to do. It is a privilege. There's no doubt about it. And in our family, every night at dinner, we go around the table and say our favourite thing that happened today. And typically, if in that day, which I try and do it most days, I've had a direct conversation with someone, either a current inpatient or someone in the community or someone. So because I manage the spinal peer support network for New Zealand, and so I'm tied up a lot with managerial stuff and planning and strategizing and paying the accounts and these sorts of things. So, but when I get out of the office and go on the ward or go out in the community and talk to people, 9 times out of 10, that'll be my story for the favourite part of the day, was whatever conversation I had with someone. And it could have been chit-chat, it could be about the rugby, it could be about, the weather. But often it's more personal than that. It's about their experience and what's going on for them. And I'm listening, and I'm contributing where I feel I can, or I'm just keeping still and just letting them tell me their story. And that's a privilege. I'm sitting there 9 times. I sit there and I think, gosh, I'm lucky to be here. I'm lucky to be in a position to listen with that person and to be there with them with a shared understanding. We could be, they could be ex-mongrel mob, but they're in a chair, and we have that in common, and we understand each other at that level, and they're able to share with me things that they wouldn't share with anybody else. It's a privilege.
Yeah, and one that you've created to put yourself into as well, because it's not a privilege everyone would have. You have to be in the right space to be a person that can be that space for people. Well, something's coming to mind, which is a little bit on a different topic, but if you're happy to go here, because it's quite profound. So one of the things we talk about in this work, and what the mind can do, because it is really beyond limitation, is the impact that the mind can have on our physical self. And, I've had people that some of them come on the podcast and talked about, dissolving drinking addictions within a couple of months after struggling for years to do it. Or one that talked about a gut issue that she was having for years and years, and went through the medical communities, and then using the power of the mind, she was able to create a space to shift that. And she said, once I started working on my mind, it changed after those years. And I remember one of our conversations, hopefully it won't be uncomfortable to bring up, but it's powerful, man.
You got me nervous now.
Well, no, it was the one where we were talking about your future, and you said, well, I won't be around anyway. You remember? And you said, yeah, I'm not going to be around because all the people in my life die at
young. Yeah, the men in my family, my father, my grandfathers.
Yeah, and so it was just like, how's the weather? Oh, it's good, or whatever. I just said, what are you going to do? And then, oh no, I won't be around for that.
Yeah.
And so we did the perception on that, and again, we investigated, because you had a belief that, and it's a common belief. This happened to my grandfather. It happened to my father. This is my lifespan. Like, we talk about it, right? Medically, we talk about it, but I just know about the power of the mind, and I know that the mind, whatever you can say. I do this exercise, which you've done, where you have a lemon. You act like you have a lemon in your hand and it's cut in half, and if you really do it and you eat it, and the body actually reacts to the thoughts that we're having, because there's no lemon. It's just a thought about it. The body reacts to what we're doing. And so we investigated that, and I remember not too long ago you reminded me and said, hey Sridhar, I'm now 61, which is past that date. That yeah, and I do know of other people, Andrew, who they started talking about the day that they were going to die. I'm thinking of somebody in particular who I won't name, who was a good friend of the family's, and he just kept saying, oh, this is the age, and literally that age he died. He'd been telling himself his whole life that was his age, right? And so, yeah, I just want to invite you to say, because that's quite powerful.
I'll tell you a wee story. Because I'm, IT, I was going to calculate exactly the day that how old my father was when he died. You put it on a spreadsheet and you put in his birth date and his death date and how many days added onto my birth date, work out exactly what the date was that I would go past on his death date. Probably 5 minutes with an Excel to calculate such a thing. And I deliberately didn't do it because I don't care.
Yeah.
I genuinely, I did care. His father died at 57, my mother's father died at 53, and I had this story that, our men in our family die young. My mother died at 90. One of my grandmothers was, in her late 80s. So there's no, genetically, that's a nonsense. So I like to say now that when I turned 60, I was going to drop down to 4 days a week, just because I'm finding it hard work. I haven't managed it yet. Then when I turn 70, I'm dropping to 3 days a week. And when I turn 80, I'm dropping to 2 days a week.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth.
I remember that was the turnaround, right? Because at the beginning you were like, I'm not going to make it past here. Yeah.
But I suspect when I turn 80 that my staff will probably murder me because I'll be a grumpy old prick. They would rather be
What are
rid
you
of me.
creating now, Andrew? What are you creating now?
Yeah.
This is our next piece of work that we need to look at.
Yeah, so we'll wait and see. But I love what I do. I don't want to stop. I want to do it, at a manageable level for energy levels in my life. But I have no desire to stop. And I get frustrated because I listen to people who think that they are on a limited lifespan, and I used to be like that. I really did, and I don't see any reason why. I feel healthier now than I did 10 years ago, quite frankly.
Look, sharing that story about, because at the start, I think what's important for people to know is that conversation that came from you, that, okay, you're not going to die young at 60, at 60 you're going to drop down, and at 70 you're going to drop down another day. That came on the same hour that we were discussing that. And you said something earlier that I just want to bring up about psychological positivity. And, this isn't that. Like, this is not psychological positivity, because that's here, right? That psychological positivity is just, I'm going to just change my thought, but then the old thought comes back. Well, it's important to know that what we do is we investigate it again. Like,
you said, what's true?
You really went there. Yeah.
What is the truth?
What's the truth? Like, do you absolutely know that you're going to die young? You went, well, I don't know when I'm going to die. Okay, why? I don't know that, right?
I could go getting hit by a bus this morning. Yeah.
Or I could be here to 125 or whatever the case might be. The truth is we don't know. And then, but what happens in that process is we go deeper in, right? And then we have a turnaround, kind of look at what's the alternative? And that's when you said, well, actually, this is the way I see it happening. And there's something really important in this. The way that we see it happening, if we truly see it, not just here, the way we deeply, in our most dominant thinking, the way that we see it happening is the way that it certainly has a massive impact on the way that it will actually happen. And I've seen people do both. I've seen people take them out of the game. I've seen people talk themselves into, death and health issues and all that kind of. I've seen people talk themselves into a happier life and a productive life. I love what you're saying. At 80, you still got something to do. And look, we've covered a lot. There's going to be so much to unpack in this. I just want to say this. Well, no, first I'll ask you, and then I'll do a closing. Like, if there's one thing you can say to people, they're out there listening to this podcast, obviously if they want to have a mind shift of some sort, they want to create a life beyond their limits. What's one thing that you would say to people watching this that say, I want to get past my limits in life and live the greatest one?
Gosh, it's an open question. I mean, it's a form of the what's the truth here in any situation. Ask questions. Ask questions of people you're working with. Ask questions of your GP. Ask questions of your nurse. This is obviously part of what I'm talking to people in the hospital about. It's about never be not asking questions, and ask questions about a situation. Ask questions in your own mind. Is this the truth? As a question, and keep asking. And it doesn't mean you're living a life of uncertainty. What you're doing is you're living a life of curiosity and a never-ending learning in some ways. Call it learning, and people switch off straight away. Oh, I finished school and university, I don't want to go back there. But it's about keeping open to not figuring you know it all, but be constantly asking and seeking that information. And in an interpersonal way, it's engaging for people. So if I'm going to ask you questions, as you do with me professionally, then that's a beneficial relationship for both of us. And I'm learning from you, but I'm also demanding an answer. So there's a cynical way, it's kind of a power relationship where I'm on an equal footing with you. It's back to the normality. It's about the equality. I'm equal with everybody in the world, whether it's the Prime Minister or the mongrel mob member. We are equal because we have a question and an answer thing going. It's communication, but it's about the question. And don't just assume you know the answer.
Wow. I mean, every time you say something, it's like going to take us somewhere else again. So we're going to be hearing about, I hope you got it 3 or 4 hours, Andrew, but it's true. We put people up on pedestals and we go, oh, they're the Prime Minister, so they must be really better than me, but they're a human being that's taken that path, and that's the path they've taken. What path have we taken that's contributing in a different way? And it is that, right? It's we're equal. And I love that. Like ask, 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 ask. It's people sometimes say, you know, I talk about the turnaround I had from drug addiction, homelessness, which I've spoken about. To, you know, I have a life that I love now, a wonderful marriage, and work with amazing people like you, and get to do that at quite a high level, and just have a lot of stuff in my life that, looking back then, it wasn't meant to be. And you know, I look at that and people say, "What'd you do?" And I think that's my answer to it is I've just asked a lot of questions.
Yeah.
If I found somebody that knew something, I would ask, 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 ask,
Yep.
ask, and
I
then
can see
ask
that's what you
myself.
did. Yep.
So, man, there's a lot to get from this episode, Andrew. Like I knew you were going to bring a lot of really profound insights to the Mindshift journey, and you certainly have. You've exceeded what I could have even imagined. And I kind of want to say in closing about you that I know that it's life is a paradox, right? Like it really is. Like when you really get down to truth, the reason it's so hard to find truth is because it's paradoxical, right? Like we have all or we have nothing, or you know, it's a seeming dichotomy. Like that's the kind of puzzle of life, is that what's true doesn't seem like it can be true. And you know, your life is all about normality and normalizing, yet you truly are an extraordinary person. Like you just who you are, you know, the difference that you make for people, what you stand for. And what's more extraordinary is you don't see it that way.
Well, I said it's not unusual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's great. So what I'm going to, you know, cap this episode as is normal is extraordinary, and we're all extraordinary. And, you know, that's the life that whatever happens to you, that's the life that you could choose to live. And I love what you said. It's ringing in my head at the moment. It's not easy. It's not an easy journey, but it's a fantastic journey. And, you know, I know for me, I feel like it's the only one that I really feel alive in. But, you know, I just want to say, unless you have anything else you want to add to it,
It's good. It's all good.
you have brought so much to us, and I want to say thank you for being here. Again, I had a feeling, well, Andrew, what a perfect person to launch this first Mindshift podcast.
Oh, it's a privilege to be involved, and I use that word a lot. I love what you're doing, and I support it, and the more that hear about it, the better.
Awesome, Andrew. Well, thanks again. Appreciate you being here, and thank you for watching the Mindshift. There'll be a lot more to come, so we'll look forward to seeing you next time, and thanks for watching this one.
Thanks.